5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Press Facebook too. Hey, it's Jordan with TYT Politics. I am back in East Chicago, Indiana. If you've been following, this is an area about 45 minutes of actual Chicago. This is actually Indiana, though. I was here last summer. There was a very big problem in this complex, West Calumet complex, low-income housing project. Predominantly African Americans live here, and it was built on top of a lead smelting plant. There was not thorough testing done for many, many years. Last year they did thorough testing, and they found lead in the soil upwards of 212 times the allowable limit for lead in the soil. I think there's no allowable limit for lead in the soil or water, but that's a different discussion. In August of last year, I was here. I interviewed an EPA administrator. I asked him, how do you know this is just in the soil? Did you test the water? He told me this is not a water issue. This is a soil issue. 3 months later, they found lead in the water. Fast forward to right now, since these numbers were exposed at West Calumet Complex, they have been telling the residents you had it got pushed to 6 months, and onward because they're demolishing this complex. It's too contaminated to have people live here. So they have been moving people out. They haven't been giving the people much help to move. They've given them housing vouchers, but people I've interviewed, you hear horror stories where they're not being helped in terms of looking for places, transportation to look at places. This is a low-income area, so not everybody has the means to be driving around and going to open houses to relocate their family. So fast forward, basically there was a loose deadline for March that families would have to be out of here, but there was negotiations going on. So I want to turn it to Emily Coffey. You're an attorney with the Shriver Center based in Chicago. You've been representing the residents here. So kind of bring me to what happened this week, because obviously families like the home I'm in right now of Akeisha, they've been looking for where to bring their family, but they weren't expecting to be forced out within 10 days.
Right. So on March 1st of this year, HUD allowed the Housing Authority here to decide that they were going to start forcibly relocating people. So through their Emergency Transfer Authority. So residents are entitled to at least 10 days notice before that goes out. So residents got their notices earlier this week saying where they're going to take the remaining residents. When this decision was made, there were well over 80 families that were still living here. And those families have been searching and just haven't been able to find a place. And the families are just looking for some housing choice. They just want to be able to go to communities where they want to go. And right now they're being told exactly where it is that they're going to go temporarily until their vouchers expire, which happens at the end of June.
So basically they're telling people, like one of the families here, and many of them, you're going to Chicago. A lot of the people actually kind of fled Chicago to move to East Chicago. Chicago, obviously, we know the problems with violence. But this is setting up all sorts of problems. Number one, most of the families here with children, their children have already been moved out of school once this year because they were in a school that was in the lead zone, correct?
They were transferred to a different school, so they're with their same classmates, but it just one of the schools is also in Zone 1 of the Superfund site, so it's just off the block. So they moved those kids to a different school, but they were still at least with their classmates and with their teachers and everything.
But the hope was that they would kind of give the remaining people till the end of the school year so you wouldn't have to abruptly move kids out of school. There's a lot of kids with learning disabilities in this area.
Yeah, and that's what the residents have been asking for. They just want their kids to be able to finish up their school year. It's so difficult to move somebody when there's only 2 months left and to just restart an education year. And a lot of the kids here have IEPs, so individualized education plans for learning disabilities that they might have as a result of the lead contamination here. A lot of the kids have IEPs, and if they have to move schools, they also have to move those IEPs. And that's just going to be extremely disruptive for their learning.
And it's not just that. So essentially, you get a notice. You have 10 days to move. You're told where you're going to move. I will talk to residents, but I'm assuming most of them are not comfortable with bringing their children to the location they're told. Are they helping in terms of placing them in schools in Chicago?
So they give them 10 days, and that's the time that they have to file what's known as a grievance. So that's essentially an appeal. Saying I can't move to this place because it would be too much of a hardship on my family. My doctors are here, my support network's here, my job is here, my kids are in school here. I can't move to Chicago. I don't know anybody in Chicago. And there's a lot of families in this situation where they're from Northwest Indiana. They've always lived in Northwest Indiana, and now they're being told that they have to move to Chicago. There are other families that left Chicago, like you said, and they came here because it was a safe place for them to raise their kids. Their kids could play outside, and here they are today learning that their kids have been poisoned because they've been playing outside. And now they're being told, you have to go back to Chicago.
But it's also, and I'll get this from the residents, but it's not exactly like, oh my God, we put you in this terrible situation where you have health issues, you've been contaminated, let us drive you to open houses, let us try to help you as best we can relocate. I've been here several times, and residents I spoke to said, no, we're having to do it all on ourselves. Many of them don't even have transportation. There was minimal help. And now, if they're making people move, there's a lot of things that don't transfer across straight lines. Can you kind of talk about all the things that are not guarantees to go with them?
Yeah. So first of all, there's a better system in place now to help the residents move, but that has only recently been in place. So residents haven't had the ability to effectively use those services because they've only been here for the last month and a half. And that's just not enough time for these services to be up and running and efficient. So to your second question about when you move state lines, you could have to transfer schools to whatever the local school is. You might not be able to access your job because here there's free public transportation, and residents will take the bus that comes here to their job. They won't be able to do that if they have to move to Chicago. Their health benefits, Medicaid, they'd have to reapply in Illinois. And that would, be a process. Change doctors, everything that makes a place home. You have to reorient yourself, and you have to find your new grocery store. You have to find, somebody to take care of your kids when you have to run out if you have an emergency or something. Just everything that you come to rely on when you live in a place for a long time, to just take that out from under somebody when they don't have any choice in where it is exactly that they're going, is just it's just wrong.
Well, here's a question, like, where's the fire? What is the rush that they must kick people out in 10 days? The news today was the $2 million was granted for this demolishing. As far as I know, it's going to take more than $2 million to bulldoze this complex. Mm-hmm. But what is the rush? Why can't they let the remaining people stay here for another 2 months and until they find somewhere else of their choosing?
Yeah, I think that's a question for the Housing Authority and for the federal housing officials who are making these decisions.
Mm-hmm. And so we have it right. HUD, the federal HUD, mm-hmm. Had to have approved this, but it was the East Chicago Housing Authority who was pushing to move the residents now.
Right. So if we go back to the beginning here, we represent residents in a voluntary compliance agreement, so a settlement agreement that was entered into in November. The goal was just to improve the relocation process for families. Our hope was that everything would be in place and there wouldn't still be 80 residents that are still living here because the supports would be in place to help everybody move. And things moved slowly in the implementation of that agreement, and so unfortunately there are a large number of families that are still here. And it was our hope that that HUD would not make the decision, that the Housing Authority could begin to forcibly relocate people at the end of this month as a result of this, and also that there are just too many people that are still living here that are still searching for a place to go with their voucher. It just doesn't make sense to move somebody for a couple months. They have to pay for those moves. They have to pay for the moving truck, provide boxes, and then if somebody moves with their voucher 2 months later, they have to pay for that again. And it just doesn't make sense when there's such a large number of families that are still here.
Unless you're in a rush to bulldoze this place because you have some other plans with it, which who knows?
So I mean, right now they can't. They still need to go through the federal approval to actually demolish the complex. And I'm not aware that that application has gone through yet. They have to go through a lot of environmental reviews before that can actually physically take place.
But overall, if the mayor of East Chicago wanted to, he could have stepped in and granted an extension through the end of the school year.
Yeah, the Housing Authority could have made that decision, absolutely. It was beginning March 1st, it was their choice whether or not they were going to begin to transfer people.
Just for viewers, because they don't know, Housing Authority, the mayor oversees it, so ultimately the buck stops with the mayor.
Sure.
And last question, I mean, you obviously represent low-income folks like this. What I know you got to kind of stick with the law, but to me, it's almost like they were, let's say, unintentionally poisoned. Nobody's saying it was intentional, and then essentially, for the majority of the time, kind of like you figure it out. Like you said, it's been better the last month, but you're talking 7 months of them having to just fend for themselves. After they were continually for decades moved in here, when there was it was known about the contaminants, lead, arsenic, other things, and now it's kind of, in my view, like here's the kick on the way out. Whether it's East Chicago, Flint, this and that, we're seeing things like this happen around the country where, through no fault of their own, people are victimized, and then they're victimized again in the aftermath.
That's right. It's really just awful what has happened to the families, and everybody's just looking for a little bit of compassion and sympathy to help these residents just recover from what's been done to them. And it's been so traumatic for the residents, and pulling kids out of school right now is going to be traumatic for them as well, in addition to it disrupting their learning.
And lastly, a lot of people in East Chicago have medical issues that they're trying to connect dots. Nobody really connected it with lead or anything like that. But besides just the stress of having to go to new neighborhoods, like you said, there could be people, Medicaid could be held up for a while going over state lines. So people could be without really critical medications, things like that.
I hope not. But so families do have the right to file a grievance. So that's an appeal. And if they can show that this is going to harm them in a certain way, I'm hoping that the Housing Authority will take that as something that they're concerned about. So
I'll be here for a few days, but actually right after this, we're switching over to to the Young Turks. So you'll go to Young Turks on Facebook and Young Turks on YouTube. I'm going to be talking to a resident here, so you get a little bit more of actually what's happened here and kind of the real faces of the victims of the environmental racism that's been going on here and other places. So give us a few minutes. We'll be moving over to the Young Turks on Facebook and YouTube.